The boy who couldn't sleep and never had to. Part 1. Darren's life and meeting Eric. Darren sat in his room, staring at the walls. Every day felt the same. School was boring, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find anything exciting to do. His parents were always busy, and his classmates didn't seem to care much about him. He felt lonely, like he didn't really belong anywhere. At school, Darren was used to being invisible. He wasn't the smartest kid, and he wasn't popular either. He kept to himself and spent most of his time daydreaming. One day, during lunch, he noticed a new kid sitting alone at a table. He had wild hair, a serious look on his face, and was drawing in a notebook. Darren watched him for a moment before finally deciding to walk over. "Hey," Darren said, sitting down across from him. "What are you drawing?" The new kid looked up, surprised that someone had spoken to him. "Just some comics," he replied quietly. "That's cool." "I'm Darren," he said, trying to break the ice. The kid smiled a little. "I'm Eric. I just moved here." Darren was curious. Most new kids usually had trouble making friends, but Eric seemed different. He wasn't trying to fit in. He seemed like he didn't care what other people thought. This made Darren feel like maybe he could actually talk to him. "What's your comic about?" Darren asked, pointing to Eric's drawing. "It's about this guy who can't sleep," Eric explained. "He's always awake, no matter what. And because of that, he can do things other people can't. He has more time." Darren was fascinated. "That sounds awesome. I've never heard of a story like that before. How'd you come up with it?" Eric shrugged. "I don't know. I just thought about what it would be like if you never had to sleep." Darren found himself smiling. For the first time in a while, he felt like he'd met someone who was interesting. Someone who wasn't like everyone else at school. Over the next few days, Darren and Eric started talking more. They both liked comic books, video games, and movies. Darren finally felt like he had a friend, someone who actually listened to him. One day after school, as they were walking home together, Darren asked, "So, what's it like not having to sleep?" Eric stopped walking and looked at him seriously. "What do you mean?" "You know, like in your comic. What would it be like?" Eric smiled, but there was something strange about the way he smiled. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe it's more than just a story." Darren stared at him, confused. What did Eric mean by that? Part 2. Eric's Secret. Darren couldn't stop thinking about what Eric had said. Maybe it's more than just a story. What did that even mean? He tried to focus on his homework, but his mind kept wandering. The idea that Eric's comic might be more than just a made-up tale stuck with him. The next day at school, Darren found Eric at their usual table during lunch. "What did you mean yesterday?" Darren asked, his curiosity growing. "You said the comic might be more than a story." Eric looked around to make sure no one was listening. Eric looked around to make sure listening is this. One individual and no one is listening. Then he leaned in closer. "You can't tell anyone," he whispered. "But it's real, the whole thing. I can't sleep." Darren stared at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "Everybody has to sleep." "Not me," Eric said firmly. "I haven't slept in years. I just don't need to." He sat back and took a deep breath, waiting for Darren's reaction. At first, Darren thought Eric was joking. Nobody could go that long without sleep, right? But as he looked at Eric's face, he realized he wasn't kidding. Eric looked serious, and there was no hint of laughter in his eyes. "Are you being serious right now?" Darren asked, still trying to wrap his head around what he was hearing. Eric nodded. Yeah, I'm serious. I don't get tired. I've been awake every night since I was a little kid. Darren blinked. How could this be possible? Normal people need sleep to stay healthy. But how does that even work? Don't you get tired or sick? Eric shook his head. Nope. I have more time than anyone else. I read, I work on my comics, I think about all kinds of stuff. While everyone else is asleep, I'm still awake. Darren didn't know what to say. Part of him thought it was incredible, but another part felt uneasy. That's crazy. So you're awake all the time? Eric nodded again. All the time. For the rest of lunch, Darren couldn't stop thinking about it. If Eric never slept, it meant he had extra hours every day to do whatever he wanted. It was like having a secret superpower. But there was something strange about it too. Darren wondered if it ever got lonely, being awake when everyone else was asleep. After school, Darren and Eric walked home together. As they passed the park, Darren couldn't help but ask more questions. So, what do you do all night? Don't you get bored? Eric shrugged. Sometimes, but I try to stay busy. I think about stuff, draw comics, read books. There's so much you can do when you have more time than everyone else. Darren tried to imagine what it would be like to never have to sleep. He thought about how much extra time he'd have to play video games, read, or just hang out. But it also seemed exhausting, in a way, like you could never truly rest. Do you ever wish you could sleep? Darren asked, curious. Eric paused for a moment, then said quietly, sometimes. Part 3. Creative Exploration. After learning about Eric's secret, Darren felt a surge of curiosity. He wanted to understand what it was like to live without sleep. As they walked home, he started thinking about how Eric could use his extra time creatively. What if you made a comic about your life? Darren suggested. It could be called The Boy Who Couldn't Sleep. Eric's eyes lit up with excitement. That's a great idea. I could draw all the things I see at night. It would be a fun way to share my story. Darren nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, you can include all the weird things that happen when everyone else is asleep. You can have monsters, magic, or even adventures in the city. The possibilities are endless. Eric's mind raced as he began to imagine the comic. He thought about his nights spent drawing in the dim light of his room, while the rest of the world was fast asleep. I could show my dreams too, even if they feel real or strange. I've had some wild dreams, he said, grinning. Let's start right now, Darren said. He found an empty piece of paper in his backpack and handed it to Eric. Draw something. I want to see how you picture your world. With a pencil in hand, Eric began to sketch. He started with a big moon shining in the dark sky, surrounded by twinkling stars. Then, he added a silhouette of a boy himself sitting under the moon, looking up. This is me, awake while everyone else is asleep, Eric explained, his voice filled with excitement. As he drew, Darren watched with admiration. He couldn't believe how easily Eric brought his thoughts to life on paper. You're really talented, Darren said. You should show this to others. Eric smiled shyly. Thanks. But I'm not sure if they would understand. People think it's weird that I don't sleep. They might not get it. Who cares? Darren replied. You're creating something amazing. It's your story, and you should share it. Maybe it will help others understand you better. As they continued to draw, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. You know, this is the best part of the day, Darren said. The evening brings a sense of calm, and I love watching the colors change. Yeah, Eric agreed. But for me, the night brings something special. The world changes. It feels different when everyone is asleep. I see things that others miss. Darren was intrigued. What do you see? Sometimes I see the shadows moving. It's like they have their own life. Other times I hear the sounds of the city at night. The cars, the wind, even the quiet noises. It's peaceful yet exciting at the same time. Darren wanted to experience it too. Can you take me on an adventure at night sometime? I want to see your world. Eric's face brightened. Sure, I'd love that. I'll show you everything. Darren could hardly wait. He felt that this adventure would help him understand Eric better. As they finished their drawings, the excitement of the night ahead filled the air. They were ready to explore new possibilities together. Part 4. The Sci-Fi Twist. That night, Eric and Darren sat in Eric's bedroom, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating their sketches. The moon hung high outside the window, casting a silver light across the floor. As they looked at their drawings, Eric suddenly had an idea. What if we add a sci-fi twist to the comic? He suggested. Darren's eyes widened with curiosity. What do you mean? Like aliens or robots? Exactly. I could draw a scene where I meet an alien who visits Earth at night. The alien could be friendly and have special powers, Eric explained, his excitement bubbling over. We could make it an adventure where we travel through space together. Darren grinned. That sounds awesome. The alien could take you to different planets, and each one could be more amazing than the last. You could explore places with giant trees or oceans made of liquid diamonds. Yeah, and on one planet I could meet a robot who can shapeshift. It could change into anything it wants. Together, we would solve problems and help creatures on those planets, Eric added, his imagination running wild. As they discussed their ideas, Eric began to sketch the alien. He drew it with big, round eyes and a colorful body that sparkled like stars. This is going to be the best comic ever, Eric said, feeling inspired. Just then, Darren's expression changed. What if we include a twist? What if the alien is actually looking for something? Maybe it lost its way home and needs your help to find its planet. Great idea, Eric exclaimed. We can create challenges for us to face together, like a maze or a puzzle. The alien could give us clues to solve. They spent the next hour brainstorming ideas for their comic. They came up with different characters, such as a wise old creature who knows the secrets of the universe and a mischievous space dog who loves to play tricks. I love how creative this is becoming, Darren said. It's not just a comic about you anymore. It's a whole universe. As they wrote and drew, the room filled with laughter and energy. The possibilities felt endless. Eric's heart raced with joy. This was more than just a story. It was a way to escape into a world where he could be a hero. Just then, Eric had another thought. What if we make it interactive? Readers could choose how the story goes. They could decide which planet to visit or which path to take. Interactive? That's brilliant, Darren replied, nodding. We could create different endings based on the choices readers make. It would make them feel like part of the adventure. As they continued to sketch and write, the clock ticked away the hours. They didn't notice how late it was getting. Eric felt alive with creativity, and he couldn't remember the last time he had so much fun. Then, Darren paused and looked at Eric seriously. You know, even if it's just a comic, it's special. It shows who you are. People will see how you feel and think. Eric smiled, his heart warming at Darren's words. Thanks. I think this is just the beginning. This comic could show others that being different is okay. We all have our own stories. Just then, a loud noise came from outside. They both jumped, their hearts racing. What was that? Darren whispered, eyes wide with fear. I don't know, Eric replied, peering out the window. But it sounds like something strange is happening outside. With their hearts pounding, they exchanged glances. This was the perfect moment for a sci-fi twist in their own lives. Part 5, on the run. The noise outside grew louder, sending chills down Eric's spine. What do you think it is? Darren asked, eyes wide with excitement and fear. I don't know, but it sounds like trouble, Eric replied. He rushed to the window and peeked through the curtains. The street was dark, but he could see flashes of light and shadows moving quickly. I think we should check it out, Eric suggested, his heart racing. Are you crazy? Darren exclaimed, stepping back. What if it's dangerous? Come on, this is our chance for an adventure. Just like in the comic? Eric said, trying to convince his friend. After a moment of hesitation, Darren nodded. Okay, let's go, but we have to be careful. They quietly opened the door and stepped outside, the cool night air hitting their faces. As they walked down the street, they noticed more flashing lights and heard strange sounds. It's like a movie, Darren whispered, feeling both scared and thrilled. Suddenly, a group of people ran past them, their faces filled with fear. Run, one of them shouted, looking back nervously. Eric and Darren exchanged glances. We should follow them, Eric urged, adrenaline pumping through his veins. They started running after the crowd, their hearts pounding. They turned a corner and saw a bright light in the sky. It was a huge craft, hovering above the park. Is that a spaceship? Darren asked, breathless. I think so. This is just like our comic, Eric said, wide-eyed. We have to get closer. As they approached the park, they could see strange creatures standing near the craft. They were tall, with green skin and big, round eyes. Eric and Darren stopped in their tracks, hiding behind a tree. What do we do? Darren whispered, his voice shaking. Let's listen, Eric suggested, peeking out from behind the tree. The creatures were talking to each other in a language Eric had never heard before. They pointed at the ground and looked concerned. Suddenly, one of the creatures turned and started walking toward them. Eric and Darren quickly ducked behind the tree, their hearts racing. What if it sees us? Darren asked, his voice low. We have to stay quiet, Eric replied, trying to stay calm. He could feel the excitement mixed with fear bubbling inside him. This was real, and it was happening. The creature walked closer, examining the area. Eric held his breath, praying they wouldn't be discovered. After a few tense moments, the creature turned back to its friends and continued talking. Let's sneak around and see what they're doing, Eric whispered. They quietly moved along the edge of the park, staying hidden. As they got closer, they could see that the creatures were trying to fix something on their spaceship. Tools were scattered everywhere. What do you think happened? Darren asked, watching closely. Maybe they crashed here? They look like they need help, Eric replied. We could help them, just like in our comic. Darren hesitated. But what if they don't want our help? What if they think we're a threat? Eric thought for a moment. We'll be careful. We can show them we mean no harm. Let's go. Gathering their courage, they stepped out from behind the tree. Hello, Eric called out, raising his hands to show they weren't a threat. The creatures turned, their eyes wide in surprise. They looked at each other, and then one of them stepped forward. It spoke in a strange melodic voice. "We need assistance. Our ship is damaged. Can you help?" Darren and Eric exchanged shocked glances. They had no idea what to do. But one thing was clear. They were now part of an adventure beyond their wildest dreams.